Hello and welcome to another episode of the Make It Epic Wedding Podcast. Mate, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you? You've had a large weekend that has just gone past.
I have. I've been down in Melbourne, so judging the Australian Videography Awards as part of the Australian Photographic Industry Weekend. Did a little presentation in front of people for their Friday workshop, which is pretty cool.
Look at you go, hey? How good. And you drove back, you made it back in time. You you know, it's been a big couple of days for you,
I don't know why, like what was I thinking to drive to Melbourne?
I don't know why you drove down, to be honest. Yeah, but that's fine.
8.5 hours. It was one road too. Like I got onto the Hume Highway, and then it said 782 kilometers to Melbourne on the one road. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought you were flying down, but anyway, that's fine. You drive down. You do it. I don't really understand why you did that, but look, anyway, you might have had a lot of thinking time to talk of it, and think about that presentation and all of that.
I won't lie, it was actually kind of nice just to, read an audiobook, listen to a couple of podcasts, whole way down. It was kind of nice, but yeah, the way back, that was rough. I left Melbourne at 6 p.m, got home at around 2:30 a.m.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, yesterday was a bit of a write-off, but look, regardless, it was a great weekend. It was good fun. Lots of networking. Lots of judging some absolutely amazing wedding films. And even some creative films and some family films. Watched a birth video, which is kind of cool.
Bit different.
I'm like, oh yeah, this is interesting. But it was great, man. There was so much talent in Australia, and it was open to the rest of the world as well. Mostly Australian entries, but God, it was good. It was so good. So the winner of the Australian Videography Award also won the Wedding Award as well, and their work is so good, so good, man.
Yeah, I saw the video, the wedding video, and it was I was blown away. I was like, this is sick. It's different, but also just so personal. And I suppose maybe that leads on to a little bit of what we're talking about today, I suppose, as well, because the way that they told the story and the way that their ability to tell that story and the way that it came out on the video, and by me watching it, I wanted to watch more because I was I just really was into it, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I guess it made us kind of go, well, what are we going to talk about today? And, Tim did do a workshop, and I guess you can dive into a little bit about that, and we're going to dive into that today as well during this podcast. But we are talking about some storytelling today.
Yeah.
And I think that this part, talking about storytelling, it's a massive opportunity for us to kind of, I guess, dive into, a bit more about our process, but then also, how it is that if you're a couple listening, how it is that you can, think about what you need to include on your day to help us tell your story better.
Exactly, right? So a big reason why that film won, because the level of storytelling was just next level. Absolutely next level. It really dived into the essence of what a story is. It dived into the characters, and it really dived into the tradition of their own traditions as people, as a couple, and it was a Jewish wedding film. But we really wanted to chat about, how do we incorporate storytelling within our own work? And, as a videographer, I've got my process of storytelling. Yourself as a photographer, you have your own process of story. But how do we really incorporate storytelling into our work? And I would hate for us to keep dropping the term storytelling, without giving it a little bit of, I suppose, really defining what we're meaning by storytelling, because it is a word that can be thrown around quite a fair bit, right? It's cinematic,
It's candid. It's yeah. There's so many words you can use out there that I suppose, especially in the wedding industry, are used a lot and just freely used. And Look, storytelling can be so much, and like I suppose from a video and photo perspective, they are quite different, but also quite similar as well. And it is one of those things where we can use it as a descriptive word without really knowing what it means.
Yeah, definitely. So talking about a photographer and a videographer, we each have our own way of telling stories, right? Like we each have our own process, how we incorporate what we do, and we're going to dive into that today. But as a photographer for yourself, I personally think that you have a better capability to tell a story with a single image, because you only have a single image to tell a story. That is all you have. When someone looks at your work, they're seeing a single frame, and you've got to provide, you've got to engage them with a single frame. Like as a videographer, there are so many different ways that you can incorporate storytelling within your process. You've got camera, angles, lens, audio, so many
movement.
The list just goes on. There's so many factors that you can use to really tell a story, and that's why I think there's such a range with wedding films, right? There is such a variety, there's such a variability. And it's based on the person that's creating that story, not necessarily the person who's editing the film, but also the person that's doing the shooting. How are they incorporating storytelling into how they shoot? And is it really shot in a way that tells your couple's story? I feel like we're going to drop story a million times.
You could turn, if you're listening at home, if you just want to grab a drink or maybe a whole bottle, you could just turn this into a drinking game. Maybe somebody say the word story or storytelling. Just have a shot.
Man, I've still got this cough as well. I've had it for a month now. It's actually ridiculous.
I know, you probably need to go and see a doctor. There's something wrong with you. Just go to the Timothy Blackadder bed at the local hospital that you've got there, mate, and just fill it up again.
That's it.
But yeah, I definitely think, getting back to what we were talking about, but I do think that as a photographer, I was thinking about it when you were talking, you said you think it's easier. I think it's harder, to be honest, from my perspective, to tell a story, because if you do only have one image, it can be quite hard to tell a story completely. Where for me, sometimes when I look at videos, I'm like, wow, that story was told really well, because there was so many more levels to it. The movement, the audio, the song choice. You can be really emotionally invested into even if it is a 10-second clip.
Yeah, definitely.
See what I mean? And that can really show a whole lot of story in 10 seconds, where for one single image, it can be quite difficult. For me, I think I pride myself on trying to, encourage couples to be themselves, and to, give them prompts and to give them tips along the way, to, create a moment for them that I can capture well, and that really does tell, a bit of that story for that moment, and for me, a part of it is as well, is that I don't expect you to be comfortable enough or to be vulnerable enough at the start of the day to do that, but the idea for me by the end of your session would be is that you are comfortable to be vulnerable with each other, or you are comfortable to really open up to me and to each other and to the camera, and then therefore that one image that I do get really may show who you are, and at the end of the day that is going to show a bit of the storytelling towards it. I think for me, one thing that does come to mind recently, I shot an engagement session, and these guys, they were so nervous when they turned up, and by the end of it, we were having so much fun. They were they literally, there was no plans to get in the water at all, but for some reason, whenever I do a shoot near the water, people always end up in it, and
not because you push them.
These guys. No, not because I push them. They push each other. But these guys literally took it on board, and they just owned it. They were a bit nervous. Then it went from them being nervous to them just having a bit of fun, to then them literally throwing water at each other. And for me, that was awesome, because there was genuinely they were laughing their heads off, and or screaming or running, or there was just so many moments to that I was just this is actually amazing. And when I finished the gallery and I looked at it on PicTime as a full gallery, I was wow, this really does tell a story, because you can tell at the start they were a little bit nervous, and by the end of it they were completely drenched, having a good old smooch, water dripping off them, and it was epic, right?
They're comfortable with you. They're comfortable with your process, and I know I've got a little bit of an insight into how you operate, mate, and I know your storytelling process starts way before the session, starts way before the day, and I think the best storytellers do have a process that really starts as soon as a couple inquires, right? Like maintaining like that client relationship. How do you start to build that relationship? But yeah, like going back for photographers, I think you guys are better storytellers for sure. Because again, like you only have that one frame to tell a story. And that's probably what I meant to say previously. You've only have the one frame to tell a story. Therefore, you have to learn to be a better storyteller. The videographers, again, like we've got so many tools at our arsenal, and I think that's where like the variability comes into play as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that like if you are a videographer out there and you're listening to this and you're struggling to use that arsenal to your full capability, I would probably suggest that you just need to go back to your basics. You know, like go back to basics and really think about how it is that you can tell a story better with, I guess, like the way that you're using your gear and things like that. So I suppose like running onto that, Tim, like you as a filmmaker, like what does that look like for you in terms of like who you are as a filmmaker?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I suppose it's taken like a while to like get to that point. Like every year, every season, every wedding, like I feel like I want to like really improve that baseline on how I am telling stories. But like over the years, you know, I've asked myself the same question, like what type of filmmaker am I? And it comes down to, you know, the things that I value, the things that are important to me. And for me, that's connection, right? First one is connection, and really, really important because I want to build a connection with my couples. I want to be able to really build a connection, to be able to get to know them so I can understand them, so I can better tell their story. But I also want to build connection with vendors, with the team, right? Like teamwork makes the dream work. And that's something that's probably really come a little bit later. So connection, number one. Number two is uniqueness, right? I value telling you know, a story that shows uniqueness to each couple. These could be, you know, like high energy films versus low energy films, and it could be like the inside jokes. It can be incorporating the little things that make, you know, a couple them, and it's showcasing their personality. Like what are the things that really make them them that I can show in their film. And the story starts before the day. Like, how can I incorporate, you know, the things before the day, leading up to the day? The third one is fun, right? We're there to be fun. Like, I love to have a joke around. I love to have a laugh. And I want that to be represented, like, as part of their film as well. Like, and it's not to say every wedding film is, like, super fun and high energy, but it's always a good time. And that's really what I wanted to showcase. So, they're the three things I value as a filmmaker when I talk about, you know, what type of filmmaker am I. But what about yourself, mate? Like, what type of photographer are you? What are the things that like you value with your work?
Yeah, and I even always think about what you were just saying then, like even like being personal. Like for me, like I don't know whether I necessarily have a number of things, but I would definitely say like being personal is something that I would have up there pretty high on my list of like what I would want to be and how I want to be with my couples. Because if you are personal, you know, like it just gives so much, they're so much more comfortable with you, you know, like going back to that engagement session I was just talking about with Courtney and Bradley, like bloody legends. We're shooting their wedding later this year, and like, you know, we have a relationship now where it's like, you know, she can, you know, Courtney can message and go, hey, I'm freaking out about X, Y, and Z. And, you know, for me, if I have that relationship prior to shooting that wedding, you know, maybe I haven't even shot an engagement session for them, but regardless, if I do have that relationship prior, it does make the day so much nicer. And then therefore the ability for me to tell the story on the day becomes quite easy, I suppose. Yeah. And because there is a lot of trust there, she values and they both value the fact that like of my opinion, and they just go, oh, Matt said we should do this, so we're going to do it, you know, or something like that. And it's not even that like at the end of the day, like, I'm saying you need to do something, but it's my suggestion or my prompt. They're not going to think twice about it. So I want to probably reiterate that again. I'm not trying to make you do something. I'm encouraging a moment to happen, and then it's all up to you as the couple to do that moment or to produce that moment.
100%.
I could repeat it 50 times in different ways, but I suppose that like everything that we are doing is for you as a couple, and if you are doing something that is not comfortable to you, that is not telling your story. And I suppose we need to remember that as creatives too. So if you're out there and you're thinking, oh, I'd love to capture this moment.
Yeah.
Well, this moment may not be a moment that is that couple's moment. And so I think we need to remember that. So like, for me, I go into every wedding with a pretty fresh and no expectations, no like shot list in my head of I have to get these moments. I try and just see how the couple interact with each other, and then from there, I'm like a fly on a wall, and I try and capture things that are happening throughout that time, and then I work on how I can include those moments into the finished product. I suppose
that is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. That is music to my ears, my friend, because it does make the day a whole lot easier. And like, yeah, there's been weddings that I've gone to, and like I've shot weddings for other people, and when you rock up to the day and you don't know the couple and you're just there to shoot, like there's just this disconnect, and you're like, and you try and judge like what would this couple like really like, and it just ends up being more of a, I'm just there to capture it, like I'm not there to like direct or interact or like have that relationship. And I really dislike that about filmmaking, and that's why, like in my business, it is the complete opposite. But yeah, like we obviously do a lot of weddings together, and some of the best weddings we do is because we really understand the couple, who they are, what their personalities are, and we make calls on the day that further enhance their story, that further enhance who they are. And man, we've made some wild calls with that before. But we have the trust.
Yeah.
But we have the trust because we've done the legwork to build that trust as well.
And I think it's not even just like that we have the trust. I think it's also that the couples have picked people that they genuinely can resonate with, or that they know work well together. So we spoke a lot about, I guess, like picking the right vendors and stuff like that on the podcast. If you haven't listened to previous episodes about this, please do go back and listen, because it is very important. And I will just say that, like me and Tim both work with different videographers and photographers all the time, and that's okay as well, and we do go and, that's like, it's not a be all or end all, but I do think at the end of the day, if you have people around you that do know how the other person works well together, it will elevate your day just that little bit more naturally, if that makes sense, without kind of like any pressure around it. So,
well, what's your process before the wedding day? Like, what is your process to really understand, like, who is, like, who's the couple? Who are these people before it gets to the actual wedding day?
Yeah, so obviously, like, again, this is stuff we've spoken about before, but, like, it all comes down to me and Tim's processes. Me and Tim have quite similar process in the sense of, like, the pre-wedding situation. So there's a booking form that you would fill out that kind of starts off quite early on, and it's an initial booking form that I get you guys to fill out once you've booked me, and that goes through, just some basic information. And typically most people who are booking me are a year to 2 years in advance, and at that time I don't expect whatever you put into that booking form to be kind of major set in stone concrete details about your day, but there's just some basic information about who you are and what you guys enjoy, and why did you pick the venue and why did you pick the date and things like that. And then as your plans progress, once we get a little bit closer, I'm also sending you out another booking form that goes through, like it's a pre-wedding questionnaire that goes through very specific details about your day, but then also ask you questions about things you're excited by. Now it's getting closer. What are one of the moments that you're most excited by? What are you most worried about? Things like that. And then I also try and encourage most of my couples, even if you haven't booked one initially, but to book an engagement session, because I do find if you do an engagement session with me or with your videographer, with your photographer, maybe a videographer too, prior to your wedding is going to be so much easier. Your story will be told so much better because there is rapport there, because we've got to know each other. You know, like, the pressure is off. And I know I've probably harped on about this a lot recently on the podcast, but then also on my own socials too, because I've been doing a lot of engagement sessions recently and I've been frothing on them. They have been some of my most favorite sessions I've been doing lately. And I think I just know, because at the end of the day, yes, you're going to get amazing photos and videos and whatever from that engagement session. The final product on the end of your wedding day, when you get all of your photos back, will reap the benefit from that one engagement session that you did do 6-12 months prior.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Because imagine knowing, you know, the things that are most important. It could be people, it could be person, it could be places, it could be things, it could be anything. But imagine knowing what is most significant to your couple before their wedding day. Like, how would that change the way you approach the wedding day? Like, how would it change the way you shoot? How would it change the way, like, your energy in how you adapt yourself? Because if you know what's most important, you're better able to really focus on the things that truly mean the most, like, to the couple. And there's the little golden nuggets there. Like, and imagine asking that question. Now for me, I asked, if you could only capture 3 moments, like, of your wedding day, what would they be? Like, imagine how much gold that question really is, and the answers that you get back. Like, how could that help you provide a better story, like, for the couple?
Yeah, and like, I suppose also imagine, like, for you as a storyteller or as a creative, like, how much easier if you did do, like, let's say you did a pre-wedding shoot with that couple, how much easier it is on the day, because you're not having to do the small talk. You know, like, you're not, like, I know for some weddings, like, if the couple aren't overly open to you and they're not overly, like, keen to, like, kind of, like, let you in, it does take a lot of legwork to get to that point, to, like, kind of get those last few moments that you really have been, like, I guess, wanting. So, you know, like, for me, whenever I do these sessions, that's why I guess I do harp on about them, because a lot of the legwork and a lot of the, like, the small talk and the, like, kind of like the dating really, like, you know, it's a bit like the way that we go about it is, like, you know, we're doing a bit of a dating process, and then we get to the engagement part of it, and it's like, you know, it just takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight, and I don't expect that from people who haven't met me before or haven't done an engagement session or things like that. I know it's going to take a little bit more time, and, you know, I probably would say too, for Tim, like, if couples haven't invested into, like, say, his booking forms and things like that, like, you know, it's harder for him to finish off and to tell that story correctly as well, not only on the day, but then also in the, I guess, the editing process too, right? So maybe just tell us a little bit, Tim, into, like, how you build the story. Like, don't give us all your little golden nuggets that you use for yourself, but maybe just tell us a little bit, like, how you build the story and how you build a bit of, like, tension, I suppose, and a bit of, like, that dramatic effect in your films.
Yeah. So, like, I could talk for a long time about this, but there's typically 3 things within my stories, and it's narrative, visuals, and sound. Okay, so not in that order. Out of all of them, I probably put more priority on sound, because I think it has so much more of significance, and that's really where I start. But how I try and incorporate into a story is, I think about narrative, visuals, and sound throughout the whole process, like before the wedding day, on the wedding day, and, you know, when I start to sit down and lay the story and begin filming. But I always want to have a process. I always want to have data that I've documented about who this couple really is, and I've collected that data, I've collected that information over the course of our time together. And, you know, I have a your story questionnaire that dives into, you know, who you are as a couple, the things that are most important to you, like, not just for your wedding, but, like, what do you do on the weekend? What do you guys like to do? What are your personalities like? What are the things that really make you guys you? And I think about, how can I adapt, like, myself to be able to incorporate more of the things that are you in your wedding day. And these are the things that, you know, I don't have the luxury of an engagement session. So, like, I use video video chats, video calls, Zoom meetings, to really like go through this. And I typically like to do this at least twice, sometimes three times, to really understand what is going to make your wedding day the most best experience for you. So again, with narrative, how does a story reflect your couple's personality? All right, so I'm thinking about this throughout the whole way, and even on the day. But I don't let these things. I don't let the pursuit of telling a story. Like the things that really are important to them. I don't let how I can invoke emotion into a film based on like just the day. I don't come into the day just thinking, okay, I have a plan now, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm actually present, I listen, because there may be something that I hear like during the vows, or like maybe the boys say something in the morning, or the girls say something throughout the day, and I'm like, like that is really emotional. That's really important. How can I capture something that I can showcase and use that with the dialogue? So it's like it's linking all these different things, and me, I've got my phone off me sometimes, and I've got some notes, and sometimes I might write some notes during the day, and I'll come back to that when I start to lay the story together and be like, oh yeah, like the bride said this, or like the groom said this, or the couple did this, and I really want to incorporate that, whether it's a joke, whether it's an emotional moment, but I want to incorporate that into their story, but.
It's also about like adapting too, right? Like, and this is the thing, is like,
yeah.
like what we do is like going back to like what you were just saying then, like taking a quick little back step is like, you were just saying then, like, I don't specifically like, on the day, there's nothing that I have to do. You know what I mean? And like, you don't necessarily have like a shot list in mind and all this sort of stuff.
No.
Like, but to do that, you have to adapt. You know what I mean? Like, if you're listening to something that happens during the vows, or, for me, if I watch the couple, once they've signed their, like, paperwork and they stand up behind or, near the, like, celebrant, and they're waiting for their witnesses to sign, I always watch the couple. That's my favourite moment to watch couples, to see how they, interact with each other. And then from that moment of them interacting with each other, that's usually the first moment they've kind of had without them being... They're still center of attention, I suppose, but they're not being directed by the celebrant or anything. They're just like, usually the celebrant says, hey, just stand up there and have a moment together. Yeah. Well, that moment, for me, is one of my favourite moments of the day. To see how these guys interact with each other, right?
Could that change?
That's where we're adapting.
And that changes, your... like, how you act, right? It changes your behaviour.
100%. Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, if a couple stand there and they're like, an arm's width apart, not really keen on touching each other, or not having a little cuddle or a little moment together, well, then that's okay. But we know that that's how they are as a couple. But, like, typically in that moment, we know that, if they are okay to be a little bit of PDA or something like that, or they are pretty snuggly with each other, like, those moments are so genuine. And I feel like that's something that we really need to kind of, like, start to take notice of as, like, creatives.
Just being present.
And then... Yeah, and just watch, like, a little bit of people watching.
You can like, go through this whole process of really, like, getting to know the couple, understanding their story. You could have a couple of shots, like, that, you think would suit this couple so much. But there's something that really stands out, right, to me. And your presence, your energy, your communication has more impact on your couple's story than anything else on the day. Like, I'll repeat that. Your 100%. Presence, energy, and communication has more impact on your couple's story than anything else on the day. Like, boom. Like how much does that really, like, just make sense? So, like, being present, like, assessing the moment. Because, like, there's been moments where, like, like, with you or without Manash in there, that we're like, okay, like, energy's down a bit. Like, this environment could really, like, these guys could really do, like, with a bit of a spike me up. And we try and, like, bring some energy in to then really, like, lift that moment. And it turns into something that's so good and so adaptable.
Yeah. And sometimes it's one thing that you've changed up that makes a difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, that one thing that you did differently that you've never done before, maybe that's all it is. And, going back to thinking about, like, the way that couples fill out booking forms and the way that we get to know them, that's all well and good, but on the day it could be very different. And I suppose, like, that's something to think about too. Like, yes, you can study your booking form that you've curated, that you really wanted perfectly written so that your couples would interact and really put effort into. But at the end of the day, like, they may have written all this beautiful stuff, and then in reality, it's going to be quite different.
And it's happened.
So, you know, like,
it's definitely happened.
100%. And that's why when I was saying it then about, like, being like, you know, you've got to adapt and you've got to, you know, that's probably one of the most important things. So if you're creative out there, you are listening, work on your skills on how it is that you can adapt and change your style throughout the day to suit your couples. It's not about us. We're not creating a video that is going to be perfect for our social media or photos that are going to be perfect for our social media. Yes, we are creating for us, but we are not creating it about us.
Correct.
And I think that's very different, right? Because I listened to a podcast this week, and it was like talking about, like, you know, do we create stories, and do we create these moments for our couples? Do we create them for our social media, or do we create them for us as individuals?
Which is interesting, right?
It's very interesting. And when I thought about it, I was like, oh, of course I create them for my couples. But then when you kind of think about it and you really, like, you know, things are ticking along and you're thinking about that of, well, yes, I created for my couples, but ultimately I'm creating it for me as a photographer, right?
That's so true.
But I'm not creating it for me as a photographer in a sense of I'm not changing who they are, and I'm not telling them to do things that I want them to do because of my social media. It's a bit of a mind.
Yeah.
Moment.
I feel like when I think of that, I'm like, well, in a way, I do. I'm being hired to create a product, but the value I place on that product is so high that has, you know, a personal connection with myself, right? Like, I want my work to really represent the couple. I want it to tell, like, a couple's story in such, like, minute details, but I put so much work and effort because I have such a passion for that process. So am I creating it for my couple? Yes, but I am creating it for myself as well. Like, I get so much energy knowing that I've created something that's an heirloom, that's something that's going to be watched in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, knowing that I've had such a heavy role in that process as well.
I also think that a part of it is like, if you're creating it for, yes, you create it for your couple, 100%. But if you're creating it for you too, your level of energy you're putting into it and the way that you're passionate about the final product is so much higher. So,
oh mate, otherwise I'd do a 5-minute montage of couples kissing with some Ed Sheeran